Yeah. Yeah, alright. I'm gonna do this video real quick. Alright, I'll call you later. Bye. Alright. End call! Ah, the buttons keep sticking. There we go. That's fine. It's a Nokia brick. The only thing I have to worry about is finding the battery after it flies out. Remember those days? I'm old. Alright, welcome back everybody. So today we're going to talk about why are we here. So before I begin, I'm just going to let everyone know I'm going to go ahead and break this video up into two parts. So as I approach the 15-minute mark, I'll go ahead and just go ahead and edit, and then just edit and do the second one. It's probably going to be these 2 pages, and then I'll go ahead and knock that one out in the third part. So when I look back, once again, as I mentioned, I'm looking at a clock. So the reason why I keep that in the edit is because it makes me feel like we're more at home. So I'm also going to do that reading from the paper thing again, due to having to hit my key points and that I need to hit because I don't want to forget them and my mind can start racing, so this helps slow it down. Alright, so before we absolutely begin, this is subsection A, parentheses, a quick word on the word God. God is a generic term for different offices that he holds. So it's as with Satan, like Satan means adversary, Lucifer's light bearer, devil is slanderer, things like that. And at the risk of confusion, I'll just go ahead and point you toward Appendix 4 of your companion Bible. Also, just keep in mind that there aren't any J's in Hebrew, so the equivalent is Y. So instead of like Jerusalem, it would be like Yerushalayim. So that also, I just want to clarify that. And then you're probably wondering why does he hit these appendixes so often. It's because this is hot. You want to get the companion Bible. You need it. It's good for you. All right, so that knocks that out of the way. So why are we here? So we're going to start off with how God created everything for his pleasure. We're going to compare this to really good parents that have a total love for their children. So it's not someone that just is to be abandoned or misused or mistreated or is a tax write-off. I'm talking about people that make their children the center of their world. When you do that as loving type parents, what does that create as a family? It creates pleasure. All right, it's pleasurable to watch your children take their first steps or their big smiles when they're little infants, like 4 to 6 months old, watching them be obedient, knowing as the cycle comes around, when it's their turn to fall in love, and you'll know your grandchildren will be as pleasurable to them as they were to you. So think of God as a really great parent. So where is that located? It's Revelation chapter 4, verse 11. He created all things for his pleasure. So that's pretty much one of the reasons why we're here. We're going to go ahead and start from the beginning. So he creates our celestial bodies. Thus the hierarchy is established. You have archangels, cherubim, us, the animals of the flesh, which also brings in dimensions. That's where they come into play, but we'll go more into that later. So all that's established. Now, since God is the king of his dominion, which is where you get the word kingdom, king and his dominion, which is everything. So that's his dominion, Jupiter and, all the dimensions, earth, us. He sits on a throne. So now if he decides to get up from that throne and go somewhere else for a moment, he would need beings to watch over or cover the throne. So this is where Satan comes in. He essentially worked his way up to the position called a cherub. The definition of a cherub is an angelic being attending on God. And it says that they're also winged, but it's winged in this sense. It's not some chubby little harp-playing baby thing. In the Strong's Concordance, winged, which is numbered 3671, it's defined as an edge or an extremity of a bird, which is, we know it can't be in this sense because we're not birds. Or an army, which makes more sense because you have like 2 to 4 or 5 cherubim. They're pretty powerful. So that would make more sense. Thus you have them winged over, because it's described when they had the Ark of the Covenant, you have the Holy of Holies, you have cherubim covering winged over. So it's like an expression. So for more in-depth analysis, you can go to Appendix 41 of your companion Bible. It'll give you more in-depth detail of what cherub and cherubim are. Alright, so back to the throne. What would you need a cherub for? Say, for example, I'll use myself. Say I decide, hey, I'm pretty awesome. I can handle keeping this all together. I can be God. So I'll just do this because it's funny, I think. So here's a throne. So I'm going to try to stay in the shot. So I'm walking along. I'm pretty awesome. I'm like, yeah, I can go ahead. I can take this over. And I just try to get up there. Now, what do I have to contend with? All right. So now that I want to be God, I have to go ahead and usurp the throne for myself. So I have to contend with an extremely powerful being that's going to kick my butt and make me think twice about my actions. So basically, it's like Donald. It's like, what happened back there? It's like, I don't know what happened. I was just kind of messed up for a second. Any idea? It's like, man, you had 20 beers. So that's kind of just funny, I guess. But there's no, you know what I'm saying. So I get myself together. Everything goes back. We go back to what we were doing. So in other words, in so many words, Satan at one time was the heaven's best bouncer. He also had other, like, they would sing, and they also had other functions, but you get the point. I think that brings it down a little bit. So what happened? What happened as described in Ezekiel 28 in verses 11 through 19 is as time went on, Satan, who at this point was the full pattern of the ways of God, which is verse 12, it's called perfect in verse 12 and verse 15, becomes lifted up in himself through pride and self-worship. In verse 17, the word lifted, your Strong's 5375 is exalt, means to exalt oneself. Some more details about this is in Isaiah chapter 14, verses 4 through 23, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, and more on his type in Ezekiel 28, verses 1 through 10, where he's called a prince, which is referring to him dying as a man, which is no big deal to have angelic beings called men. Like Gabriel means man of God. He was an archangel, one of two mentioned, the other is Michael. So that's not another subject, but it's just, I know it says Ethbal, and it's like the king, the prince of Tyre, and it's historical, but it's also the type of what's going to happen to him. So what it's saying is that Satan wanted to be God himself. Since that's what is not going to happen, that's what is not going to happen. I think that's worded correctly. I'm not a grammar major, so if I ever meet a grammar major, we can go over that sentence, because I'm pretty sure that's the right way. Anyways, that's not going to happen. That's the point. So due to most rulers that worked hard at their creation and do a really good job ruling it, and everyone seems to like them, they usually don't just dethrone themselves easily and say, here, you're obviously not qualified to do this. Take the reins, screw everything up, I'm outski. Peace. Doesn't usually happen. So Satan took the next best available option, which is to corrupt and pervert the subjects of the king. This is the beginning of the controversy between God and Satan. The culmination is Satan being destroyed and blotted out, which we'll go into shortly. So how did he do it? He used those wits of his to transgress against God. This is what brought sin as defined as transgression against God and the law. Satan took what was holy and innocent and flipped it to unholiness and faultiness. He did this specifically in Ezekiel 28 verse 16, which is described as merchandise that fills the midst of thee with violence. Your strong number for violence is 2555. It's pronounced kamash. In other words, he traffics in immoral behavior, bringing, just to name a few, wrong, unjust gain, cruelty, damage, false, injustice, oppressor, unrighteousness, violence against or done, and violent dealing and wrong. So just everything the opposite of what he used to be. So the word sin here in verse 16 means, in Hebrew it's chata. It means to miss the mark, stumble of the feet, and fall. Morally, coming short, blameworthiness, but not necessarily willful, meaning tricked or beguiled into it. In verse 15, the word iniquity is perversity. So in Hebrew, it's aval, which means unjust, unfairness, sin in its nature as deceitful, dishonesty, that which is not equal and right, unfairness in dealings. In verse 18, iniquities is in the Hebrew avah, which is perverseness, from the root to be bent or crooked. So Englished, it would be to be wrung out of course. This is all in Appendix 44. It describes just the different words for sin. Each one means different things. So that's just an example of that. So put all together, like, what is this all saying? He used deceit, dishonesty, and perverseness to make us all miss the mark and to stumble and to be bent and crooked from our previous moral behavior to be all wrung out of course. That is essentially what happened. He just flipped his stuff and went crazy, so to speak, and that's the only way he can basically beat God. So what is the end of all this? That also, it kind of brings like this together, which is the third part of what I'm going to talk about here in the next part. So what we're going to do is we're going to read half verse 18, starting at the middle, and then verse 19, and then we'll go ahead and go to part 2. So this is Ezekiel 28, verse 18, second half. Therefore I will bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth. In other words, he's going to destroy him from within. All they that know thee among the people shall be astonished at thee. Thou shalt be a terror, never shalt thou be any more. So what it's saying is, after he destroys him from within, and all his followers, which is the white throne judgment, which is described in Revelation, basically he's blotted out from existence. So after all this is done, we go, hey, do you remember that guy that brought all this and made us go through this and experience pain, disease, and all that stuff? And we go, no, actually, I don't. You want to go do something? It's like, yeah, let's go. That's not revenge, so to speak, but it's just the correct judgment. So, because when people who just treat victims badly, in their brain, they like to hey, what's the best thing that can happen? It's like, every day my victim's thinking about me. Ah, ha, ha, ha. That's gone. This is all gone. So, why is he a terror? It's because I think after he's released from the pit for a short time, which is he's going to start terrorizing us one last chance to see who will still follow this guy. Some will not believe they listen to him, and some still will. They're still going to think that this guy is the right way to go. And then he's gone, and then he's blotted out from existence. So, let's see. I guess I'll go ahead and stop there for right now for this part. So that's kind of where I'm just going to leave it at that, and then I'll be right back, and we'll go overhead and go to the next part. So I will see you as soon as you click that button, or something. No, just click the link. See you.